Hello and welcome to this episode of the P&E podcast. My name's Jack Jacob and I am your host. In this episode, I'm joined by Lisa Hawker, who's the head of IT at ARC Schools, which is a multi-academy trust comprising of 37 schools. So firstly, this episode is for all, but especially if you're a mother, especially if you're someone that wants to get into tech or an aspiring leader. This conversation is extremely interesting and inspirational, where we cover Lisa's career and personal journey. Lisa starts with telling us that she wasn't actually that academic growing up, but always worked really, really hard. And that was exemplified by the fact that she left school at 16 in the May of that year, went into secretarial college in the June, and then walked straight into a job in the September. Through her start as a secretary, she discovered an affinity and an aptitude for IT and helped to automate a number of processes. From there, she progressed into IT roles and into an IT coordinator role in a primary school, and from there progressing throughout the ranks to now a head of IT at a multi-academy trust, as said, with 37 schools. Now, in between all of that, Lisa was pregnant and then married at the age of around 20, divorced and a single mother by 21, and really had to navigate the balancing act of being a young single mother with really strong career aspirations. And as such, she returned to work just after 3 months after giving birth, making her story a truly inspirational one. Please do enjoy this episode as we get to know the person behind the job title. Hey everybody, before we get into this episode, just want to give a shout out to the episode sponsor, which is XMA. XMA deliver IT solutions which enable educators to evolve and transform the way they work, and have been doing so for over 30 years now. They've been applying the right balance of computing, data center and print technologies to empower connectivity, mobility, security and collaboration across the whole of the public sector. The modern classroom embraces technology in all aspects of learning, which typically incorporates connected devices, audio-visual tools and an efficient IT infrastructure to support that technology. The teams at XMA work to understand your goals and objectives so they can empower connectivity, mobility, security and collaboration across your schools, which is why they work so closely with your schools to deliver hands-on training, host planning workshops to agree your project roadmap and present you with affordable solutions that will allow you to reach your objectives and goals. For more information, please visit www.xma.co.uk. Thank you for joining me, Lisa. So let's start with basically at the beginning for you. So talk to me about your childhood.
Okay, I was born in West London. I was born in Hammersmith Hospital, which is now a teaching hospital. I grew up in Notting Hill until I was about 5 years old. My mother was born in Notting Hill, but my dad is from Kent.
Yeah.
He was actually born in Whitstable. My mum always said that, living in London in the 70s wasn't the best place. So she was keen to bring her family up outside of London.
Yeah.
So we actually moved out of London when I was just coming up for my 6th birthday, actually.
Yeah.
And we moved halfway between where my mother was from and where my father was from.
Yeah.
But all my cousins and my grandparents on my mum's side stayed in London. So literally until I was about 16, I still spent every weekend in London with my family. It was growing up in the 70s was amazing. It was actually a brilliant time. I had a really, really happy childhood.
Yeah.
I've got an older brother who's 5 years older than me, and I've got a younger sister who's 11 years younger than me. So we're quite big age gaps.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, quite big age gaps, but same mum and dad.
Yeah.
I then when we moved to Kent, I actually had to start the primary school again because I'd went to nursery and went to school quite early in London, and the primary schools in Kent weren't the same. So I actually almost started the primary school again. So that was quite strange.
Yeah.
But it was happy. It was
good.
It was happy.
Yeah, good. No, that's good. That's good. So a similar situation actually to my family, because I think a lot of in the 70s, I think, or my nana, it was this late 70s or early 80s that she moved down to Crawley, and there was almost like overflow towns that were created and stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's the same. My old man, similar Battersea, and then moved down to
Yeah.
Crawley, and so yeah, you've got all these like these home county towns
Yeah.
in south that are just
Well, where we moved to, it was literally both sides of our neighbours, the people opposite, they were all people that are moving out of London. So
yeah,
they was all ex-Londoners. So we just had that affinity of people all in the same situation. It was like a new close, a new housing estate,
yeah,
and everybody was, quite similar. So
yeah.
yeah, I think it happened a lot in the 70s.
Yeah, no, indeed. So you're now working obviously the kind of education sector and stuff. Was you academic growing up?
Not specifically, I don't think. I mean, I obviously grew up as I said, in the primary schools in Kent, and the selection tests still take place in Medway and Kent. So there was an 11 plus test. I did
Okay.
take the 11 plus. I didn't pass it. I remember being really, really disappointed about not passing it. A lot of my friendship group actually were those that passed the 11 plus and were
And the
going
11
on to
plus was to
grammar
get
school.
into like a grammar school,
Grammar
isn't it?
schools,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, exactly, and that still exists in Kent today.
yeah,
Um, so I wasn't particularly academic. I've never thought of myself as particularly academic, but my mother always says, "But you just worked really hard." I just feel that I always wanted to do better, and I worked hard.
mm,
So I didn't pass the 11 plus, and I went to a comprehensive girls' school. It was CSEs. It was even before GCSEs were in place. So
yeah,
I took CSEs exams. I didn't even take O levels, but I did fairly well. I was quite poorly around the time of my exams, so I didn't take a couple of the actual physical exams and had to do a lot based on assessment.
yeah,
But I did okay. But I just know that I worked hard. Um, but I didn't want to stay in education either. I knew that I wanted to leave school. I was quite striving for independence. I wanted to, be my own person. I wanted a job. I wanted to be independent. I wanted my own money.
mm,
So anything that, I was very driven. I wanted a career, and I just knew that I wanted to work in London. So
yeah.
no, I don't think I was academic.
Fair enough. So I know some part of your story in terms of, and we'll come on to that sec. So I was really excited to do this podcast with you, just because I think that you, and I don't think you know it, and I don't think you feel it, but you will be. And after this episode's finished, I can assure you, you will have inspired a lot of people, but particularly women, and women with children, and women that have had a couple of careers, and so on and so forth. And we'll get into the conversation about it.
Mm.
But do you see yourself as an inspiration to women in tech?
Um, I mean, you've got to know me a little bit recently, so you know how I can be, and I hope I'd like to be an inspiration, and if I can just inspire a couple of young women to take a career in IT, then I'll be delighted, and I feel that my job is a part way done,
Yeah,
because I do want to inspire. I think everybody should have an opportunity, and I think I am proof of the point that it can be about hard work and about having goals and achieving those goals, which is what I have done, because
yeah,
I've actually achieved. I had some like really big goals of I wanted to be a head of IT, and I've achieved that, and I do believe that I can continue. So if I can inspire, then that would be great.
cool.
That's exactly what I'd like to do.
Cool. Well, we'll come on to your story and as to why, I think you're an inspiration, for the little part that I know, and it'll be good for me to really dive into that kind of story a bit more. So 16. Did you leave school immediately? You said you didn't want to stay in education. So did you leave school at 16?
Yeah. I left school after literally, when you go and take your exams, and then you
Yeah.
have your exam time off, etc. I never went back to school after that.
Yeah.
So I left school in the May. Um, as I said, I didn't know specifically exactly what I wanted to do, but I just knew I wanted to work in London. I mean, in those days, my mum was just like, well, you're not staying at home, you're going to get a job. So, you're not just sitting about the house, but
Yeah.
it's not something that I wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
I think it was a friend of mine had taken a course So I just said to my mum, "Oh, well, I can do that then. If that's okay, I'll do a secretarial course. I'll do some training, and then once I've got some, some exams, some training behind me, then I'll be able to get a job."
Sure.
So they agreed to it. I mean, it was quite a lot of money in those days. I think they paid £1,000 for me to take a private secretarial college course.
Yeah.
And it started it was supposed to be for 3 months, and I started in I think I started in the June, so about a month after my exams had finished
So
and
there
I'd
was
left
no
school.
gap between school
Not,
and
no,
because
not really.
yeah,
No.
because I left school at that age too at 60. Well, I got politely asked to leave, and shock, and yeah, and I had my summer holidays before I started working, just because I wanted that little bit of time for me before I got into work. So
Yeah.
you went straight into it
I
then?
went straight.
No
I
much
went
about.
straight into college, and it was a secretarial course. And I actually took computer studies as a subject in my select. When you do your selection of what exams you're going to do, I actually chose computer studies. Now, actually, I mean, I'd been into IT and, well, more tech in a way in my teens, and we can talk about that a bit more if you want to explore that. But I had been into it, and I had taken computer studies, and I was interested. And when I took the secretarial course, one of the things that I absolutely loved was word processing. So computers, it was just a single computer. It was a personal computer, a PC as we knew them then. And the word processing element of it really excited me. I was like, oh, I can do all of this on a computer, but I had to learn to type first. They wouldn't let me go onto the computer unless I'd learned to touch type.
Right.
So we had a great big old-fashioned, what we called golf ball. I think they were IBM golf ball printers, I think they was called, and they was really hard manual typewriters. And I had to learn to touch type, and they covered up the keys. And I still stand by, it's one of the best skills that I've ever learned was to touch type. I did that in about 2 weeks.
What can you? What's your words per minute?
Oh, at one point, I think it was about 100. I think
Yeah.
I really did get quite quick. It's
Yeah.
not that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think at one stage when I was actually working as a PA, I was typing about 100 words per minute.
Yeah.
But yes, it was the the word processing using the computer that really excited me. So I passed all of those courses. I actually asked if I could do an add-on course, which was bookkeeping, which I did, and I think I passed all of my exams, and I left there in around the end of September, beginning of October of the same year that I'd left school. So still 16.
Yeah.
So I said, right, I'm ready to go to work now. My mother took me up to London. We visited, I think, 2 recruitment agencies on the same day. I walked into the recruitment agency in the morning, and this is how different recruitment has changed from when I first got my job.
Yeah.
Walked into that recruitment agency. They said, take a seat. They did a small interview with me. They did some tests, shorthand, some typing tests, and they went, right, just wait there a moment. And then they come back and they said, right, we've got you 3 interviews. So there and then I got 3 interviews. So I walked out of that office and went to one interview, took that interview, went to another, took that interview.
Oh, what, on the same day?
On the same day that I'd walked into the recruitment agency.
Really?
Yeah. Literally, they just, obviously in those days, they obviously would have got jobs on a book, and then but for whatever reason, I don't know, but I mean, you couldn't imagine that ever happening today.
You couldn't. No, not at all. Well, I worked in recruitment for about 3 years, and I'll probably say the quickest I've had was probably a day later, a telephone interview, let alone face-to-face interviews.
3 in the same day.
Yeah,
I went to the interviews, bearing in mind that we went back to Victoria to get the train back to Kent, so it's only about an hour and 15 minutes. We got back to home, and literally as we walked through the door, the phone rang, and it was the agency telling me that I'd been successful in one of the jobs and offering me a job.
Oh, amazing.
And that job was working in the typing pool at the Institute of Electrical Engineers on the Strand, and it was the most fascinating place.
Yeah.
It was fascinating.
Yeah. So it was almost kind of had a bit of tech kind of spin to it.
I worked in the typing pool, and I worked with a lot of ladies. that had been there for a number of years working in the typing pool. You know, some of them were, I mean, I'm still 16 at this point.
Mm.
I always felt that I was really mature for my age. I don't know why. I mean, I just felt that I was, and I was absolutely loving it. But really quickly, I was showing them how to do stuff on the computers. So I
Yeah.
was showing them how, just silly things. So I obviously had an aptitude for IT even then,
Mm.
in the respect of, I was saying, what, you don't know how to do mail merge? Oh, I'll show you how to do mail merge. Oh, I've set up all the addresses on labels so that you can just print them like in sheets on the printers, rather than they was still handwriting envelopes and things like that. I taught them how to do it. It was, when I think back, I think, wow, I was brave, really.
Mm.
Just to, go in there and go, oh, I know how to do that. I'll show you how to do that. So yeah, and that's what I did. So there was definitely an aptitude for being able to pick up things in
Yeah.
technology quite quickly.
Mm.
And I think that was the first time I realised that I was, actually was a quick learner, and I could actually probably progress into doing other things.
Yeah, of course, makes sense. Yeah, I think what it probably is just that logical mindset and being able to learn and retain the information quickly, and then passing on. So did the older ladies that you work with, did they like that, or did they not like that? Because I can imagine
Yeah,
you've probably trodden a few toes as well, doing to
yeah. I think they actually they didn't seem like they minded it, and they were really kind, and we all got on very well. I'm not sure that the lady that used to run the typing pool, I mean, imagine like really old-fashioned like times. I mean, this was the Institute of Electrical Engineers. I mean, in some respects, and I wonder if anybody from the Institute of Electrical Engineers ever watches this, but I remember arriving and thinking, wow, this place is amazing. Huge historic building on the Strand and on the Embankment in London. We had a refectory, so we had a staff canteen. We used to need to log in and log out with your card when you arrived into work. You'd go to the canteen and you'd get a piece of paper, and you could have a three course meal, and it was 11p, like highly subsidized, like
yeah.
lunch. But when I used to deliver the typing back out to the people that were working there, it was like these little windy staircase, and you'd go down this windy staircase, and there'd be an old man sitting in this office that you didn't even know was there. And I don't know if you've ever seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, where they have all of those old men making the toys, etc.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. And Mrs. Fricker, I never forget her. She used to run the typing pool, like very severe lady, really old-fashioned suits. She used to check everything that you did. Like, she'd take a sample of work and quality assure it and all sorts of things. I mean, she was really experienced, and she was
Yeah.
quite a nice lady. But I think it was a bit. I mean, you imagine somebody at the end of their career and somebody coming in, and that gap between me
Mm.
and her, and I think sometimes I don't think she liked it very much.
Yeah, I can. So did you call her Mrs. Fricker, did you say?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. See,
Yeah,
that's so,
we
it's
did.
crazy to think that, in relative terms, not that long ago, really. What's this, the 80s, early
Yeah,
90s?
so what year would it have been? 87?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 1987.
Yeah. So not that long ago, really.
No.
Imagine if you went into work today and one of your kind of new members of staff called you, hi, Mrs. Hawker.
Yes.
You go, I'm not a teacher.
No.
Call me Lisa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does feel very strange and quite dated now, doesn't it? But it is relatively recent
Yeah,
times.
yeah,
Yeah.
crazy. So you've done that for a couple of years. So talk to me about, because I know you had children quite young, relatively young.
Yeah.
By about 20, you had children, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was 21 when I had my
21.
son.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I mean, I was about to get married, so it wasn't, anything of a surprise, but I was very career driven, and I did, I did think, oh, how is this going to affect my career? I really did think about that. What do I do? Do I give up work? My mother was a stay-at-home mum. She'd been the homemaker. My dad had his own business, and she stayed at home to bring up all the children. And there was this view of that that's what girls did, that,
Mm.
you had your children and you did give up a career. And there was, around the 80s, there was this movement of, and things were changing where women are empowered and women can have jobs, women can have it all. I'm still not convinced about that, but that was the general feeling in social times. So I was a little bit like, oh, I
Yeah. So is your mic
as my head
oh,
is
there
it
you
just
go.
gone?
No, it's all gone. No, you're back again. You're back again.
I'm back.
So what was that period? So how long did you get pregnant when you worked at the as a
No.
or would you have a couple of jobs between that?
Yeah, I stayed at the Institute of Electrical Engineers for just under 2 years, and then I went to work at a marketing company as a PA in a services division. And I'd not long left there, and I decided I'd moved up to London. By this time, I'm having fun. I'm 19, I'd moved up to London and with my girlfriends, and was sharing a house. And I thought I'd just take something. I was doing some temping work, and
Yeah.
then obviously that was even more disruptive because I didn't actually have a job. I didn't have a
Right.
permanent job, so whilst pregnant, I wasn't going to be entitled to any maternity. I mean, and there was really very limited maternity benefits anyway. So I literally found myself pregnant in a temping job, and I was actually temping a government subsidiary,
Mm.
part of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. They was called Food from Britain, and
Okay.
basically they work with UK companies to help them export British goods. And I was temping there, and I was actually doing a variety of jobs. I was doing some finance, admin, and actually I was helping doing a bit of IT as well. And I think that's where I really felt that this is what I really, really want to do. IT, logical computing. That is actually where my passion is.
Mm.
But yeah, so I was temping. I found out I was pregnant. I was about to get married. I was going to London to buy my wedding shoes, and I slipped on the train and ended up underneath the train at Victoria.
Oh my God.
Broke my ankle when I was just. It's quite embarrassing. Mind the gap. I literally went down the gap. So I broke my ankle. So it was quite a traumatic time, to be honest with you. I remember, feeling quite sad because I was pregnant. I really
Was you
didn't have.
heavily pregnant at that time, or?
I was 4 months pregnant, so I mean, it
Yeah.
was traumatic. I got rushed to hospital. I had to have an emergency scan because obviously you can't have an X-ray. So I
Cool.
remember it was. I was still quite young. It was
How old was you at
all
this point? Was you 20 at that point?
20,
Yeah.
21. I was just 21 at
Right.
this point.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can remember feeling it was all a little, all quite daunting, knowing that I wanted a career, but then thinking, well, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get out of this.
Mm.
But I've always been quite optimistic, and I just thought, well, just do what you've done so far, which is just carry on working hard and just see what happens.
Yeah.
So, and Ollie was born in April '92. I'm just 21.
Yeah.
And actually I was still temping at Food from Britain, and I actually had 2 weeks off before. I'd planned to have 2 weeks off. That's right, I'd planned to have 2 weeks off, and then he came 2 weeks early, so I actually had, I think, 1 day off of actual rest.
Yeah.
But they was quite good with me, and I went back there straight after.
So
think I
did
went
you? So just sorry to buy. So just so I understand. So did you get married then while she was pregnant?
I did
Yeah.
in the December. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so literally, I was pregnant. I mean, was planning to get married anyway.
Did you get married with a broken foot then?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying
yeah,
to work out time. So
yeah,
yeah,
I
April,
did.
December.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got married with a broken foot. I mean, it's all of those things. You just think, oh, it's just. I look at the photos, and I've got my one leg pulled behind the other, where I'm trying to hide it. Plus, being pregnant, and I'm 21. I'm like, this is all too much.
Yeah.
Um,
Of course.
no, it was, I went back to work at 3 months, and that when he was 3 months, and that was really, really hard because by this time I was a bit like, oh, when I think back now, and I think it's right. I'm really delighted that everybody has great maternity and paternity benefits, and I think, oh, I just wish that I'd had that. I
Yeah.
wish that I could have had that year.
Yeah, cool. So that's really hard to go back after 3 months because,
It was really tough.
you know, our baby's coming up 6 weeks, and I can't imagine, Jordan ever being in a position in another 6 weeks' time to go back to work. That's tough. So what about your husband then? So what was the situation then?
Yeah,
It wasn't that he had a well enough paying job where you
yeah.
could be off, and was he quite young as well?
No, he was 5 years older than me, so he
Right.
was 26 when we
Yeah.
had Ollie. We'd been together from through teens on and off. We'd had and he didn't have a bad job, but we couldn't have afforded just to live on his money. He was self-employed as well, so it was difficult. I just didn't have any choice. We needed a second income, so I had to go back to work.
Yeah.
Um,
And so where did Ollie go while she was working then?
yeah, I was quite lucky there. So I actually managed to come to an agreement, which was actually groundbreaking at the time because there wasn't really flexible working. I actually said, like, I need to come back to work, but I can't come back to work full time. But I can't afford to only come back a couple of days a week because of my train fare. So we come to this agreement where I'd work Thursday, Friday 1 week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday the next, so that I could buy a weekly ticket. So it was almost like a week on, a week off.
Get you.
So I sort of worked 2 full weeks of the month, and that
Ah,
actually worked really well. So my mother used to have him 2 days, and then my husband's mother would have him 3 days, and then they would alternate it. So he was only ever with his grandparents. So
yeah,
I couldn't have done it any other way.
yeah.
Um, and that worked, but it was difficult. It was really challenging for a number of reasons. So it wouldn't surprise you for me to tell you that the marriage didn't work out. Quite as it broke down really quickly.
Right, okay.
Again, and it was all of those things happening. And when I think back, I think
So how long was this into after Ollie was born? How old was you when you broke up
nine
and got divorced?
months. We
Oh,
broke up.
really?
Yeah, we broke up when he was 9 months old. Yeah.
Wow. So what? 22 now? This
Yeah, just coming up. Yeah, just coming up. Well, just gone past my 22nd birthday when I moved back home to my parents with Ollie, uh,
sure.
and he was 9 months old. Just coming up for 10 months.
Wow. Wow. So 22,
Yeah,
baby, married, divorced, single
yeah,
mum now,
yeah.
but trying to fight to make still a career,
Even more
but ultimately,
important. Even
yeah.
more important though, Jack. It was even more important to me then because then I felt completely responsible for this child, and I really wanted to. You know, I can remember
Can I
having.
just ask a question? Did you feel that you had something to prove at that point? Because there's so many women that, 22, single mum, you know, a lot of people would have written you off, right?
100%,
And
100%.
and so
Yeah,
did you get that bit between your teeth at that point and go, I'm not being a statistic here. I'm not being I'm not being, do you know what I mean?
yeah. And I actually remember having that conversation. I remember talking to people and saying, I am not going to be a statistic. I am not
Right.
going to be, I am not a statistic. Just because I'm a single mum, I'm a working mum, and and I am going to do well. So exactly what you said. Um, I was. I just knew that I had to work hard and strive to do better, not just for me, but for Ollie. And I wanted him to see that, he could have a strong female influence in his life. So absolutely, that is definitely, I did feel that I had a lot to prove, and I did feel that I'd have to work harder to prove that. And actually, I saw that very quickly in that job. So I went back to work at Food from Britain as a
Yeah.
temp, and they quickly offered me a job, and it was doing something that I hadn't done before. And then this is where I could see that I was capable, and not of being more than a PA, but I could see how the skills could be transferable. So, we're talking about organizational skills here.
Yeah.
I'm very proactive, always have been. And you could see how those skills could transfer. And I actually got a job with them as an exhibitions assistant, and this was organising international food exhibitions, which would mean that I would need to take some European travel and work away on occasion. So, I went back, and I took this job. and it was great for probably for another year. You know, I travelled all over Europe. I worked in Amsterdam, in
Yeah.
Paris, in Germany, at these food exhibitions, and it was great. It was great for me. I could
Yeah.
see, you know, and I was starting to get a bit of feedback on my capabilities and things like that, which was good.
What, in
But
terms of compliments from your bosses
yeah,
and so on?
yeah,
You're doing a good
exactly,
job. You've got skills in X, Y, and Z.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I could see I was
Builds
doing well.
self-esteem. Yeah, builds
Yeah,
self-esteem, builds confidence.
yeah, I was starting to do well. But Ollie was getting a bit older. You know, some of the times that I was away, and he stayed with his dad or my parents or his grandparents. And I think it's so different now. Like, you know, with all these blended families, with split families, and you know, there's like you know, shared parenting. Like Ollie, I mean, it was very old fashioned in those days. He didn't go to his dad's in the week for dinner. Like, it wasn't like shared parental care or anything like that. It was literally me. He used to go to, and he had a very good dad, and his dad has been really supportive, and he's been a great dad, and we still get on well now. But he'd have him one night every other weekend. That
Mm.
was the, you
That
know,
was just the way it was, right?
it was just the way it was.
Yeah, my mum and dad split up when I was 2, and it was that or less, to be honest.
Yes,
It was that
it,
or less. And there would be times where I wouldn't stay around for probably a month. So yeah, completely. Do you think that because you were a working mum and the tradition was that mum should be at home with their children and being mothers, not working,
yeah.
do you think that you were perhaps looked down on a little bit because of that?
Well, I had some problems with my own mother about it.
Really?
You know, we used to, you know, go to toe to toe quite a bit on it. You know, Ollie's young. You know, you really should be at home. He needs you. And at this point, I was starting to see the struggle because, you know, going away, I was coming back. I could see that he was really missing me, and it was a struggle. And I thought, "Do you know what, I can't actually continue doing this." I
Mm.
felt and it's that all or nothing, isn't it? You know, I'm not very good at doing two things mediocre.
Yeah,
It's
neither.
you know, I'm a bit all or nothing. I have to do something 100%, or I don't feel it's worth doing at all.
Mm.
I've learned a lot about myself actually in the last 10 years, where I've given myself quite a bit of slack on that now, so I'm not quite there where I was then. But I did really beat myself up about that. And I had met somebody new, and I felt that I had an opportunity to settle down with somebody.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, okay, then maybe I should, you know, give up a little bit of working. And, you know, I was struggling with the all or nothing, and concentrate on Ollie a bit more, and then see where that takes me. And I resigned from that job. This, by now we're talking 1997, so Ollie was just, you know, just started school.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, and I gave up the career in London and thought, right, well, I'm going to concentrate on Ollie now for the next few years. Didn't know what I was going to do. I remember feeling completely upset and shattered about it, but I knew it was the right thing to do. That I knew that, you know, I needed to be the one taking him to school and picking him up. It felt like the right thing to do, but I knew that I still needed to work. So yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do.
And at this point, was you still living at your parents', or had you moved out and got your own place and so on?
Yeah, I'd by this time, I'd got a flat. I was given a flat, and I'd moved out with him. So I'd been back from home for about a year.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, we'd been on our own, living away from my mum and dad's for about probably getting on for 2 years, and I'd met somebody new, and we was looking to move in together. So that's what we did. And like I say, I gave up that job in London, and I was like, well, I need to get a part-time job locally. I need to work. And it was, you know, trying to find out what that
Yeah.
job was, and, you know, what was I going to go back. You know, I'm going back to starting again, because ultimately, what I've got is some secretarial skills. You know, I can go back and be a PA. And I actually applied for a job at the Medway local authority. It was a new unitary authority. It had just split from Kent County Council, and it had just come to fruition, and it was a new local authority. and they had lots of jobs and recruitment.
Mm.
And this is how it all started. So I actually managed to get a job in the education department at the local authority, in a team, in the IT team, as an admin PA. And it
Okay.
was at the time when something was created called the National Grid for Learning.
Yeah.
And it was a program that had been created for teachers. Basically, it's digital strategy for teachers, because IT was coming into schools. They had the old BBC computers, and more IT was coming into education, and it was basically around digital skills for teachers.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just found myself back in, like, moving towards working in IT. And I worked in that team. I worked part-time, so I used to take Ollie to school in the morning. I used to work 9:30 till 3, I think. I used to leave there and then go and pick him up. But
Yeah.
it wasn't term time only in those days. It was full-time. And I
Right.
used to get 4 weeks annual leave. So school holidays were a
6
real
weeks. Yeah,
challenge.
yeah, yeah. There's 13 weeks in the school holidays, isn't there?
13 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a real challenge. So I used to, have to get, look for people to look after him. Actually, I used to, one of my best friends from growing up, she used to look after him for me sometimes, that I could go to work. But it was
Did it ever create
challenging.
problems in terms of like where you couldn't get babysitters, or you couldn't get, or say he was ill or something like that? Did you ever, because even still back then, it's, so for example, if one of my team, their child was ill, it's fine. They've got a laptop, they can work from
Yeah,
home, and
yeah,
and there's workaways around it. Or if in fact they're ill, and that's fine,
yeah, yeah.
But back then it wasn't as
It
kind of,
wasn't.
yeah.
It
It,
wasn't. And we're talking about late 90s here, actually coming into like 99, 2000. And it really wasn't. They was quite flexible about, if he was sick,
yeah.
um, they would be, but you'd feel guilty. You'd still feel guilty about it and feel that you needed to make the time up. But
Yeah.
generally, if there was a problem, you need to take it as annual leave. There was no flexibility. If you couldn't go in, for whatever reason, you used to have to book it off as leave. And again, I come back to, I'm so pleased that things have changed, but it was really tough. It was all the challenge was all your challenge, and you wasn't going to get a lot of help from your employer for that. It's not like it is now. There's
Mm.
and I do try to be as flexible as I can with my own team, for that reason, because I've lived through it, and I wouldn't want anybody to go through what a struggle and how
Yeah.
hard it felt sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I get it where, whether it's, people in my team that have children, and I feel guilty, or I feel like I'm taking the mick.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that. It's
No.
fine,
Yeah.
it
It's
honestly,
life.
yeah, exactly. Let's lead with empathy. Let's lead with understanding.
Yeah.
And I've had other team members that don't, that, she had problems with like tonsillitis, but it kept
Yeah.
reoccurring.
Yeah.
She's calling me like crying because she's had to take another day off sick, and she's like, I'm like, don't get upset, but you're ill. You cannot
Yeah.
help that. You being
Yeah.
upset and stressed about you being ill is not going to make you better quicker. It's going to do
No.
the opposite.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why, but there has been a shift in people's kind of the way that people lead now, with empathy rather than with the stick, right?
Yeah.
And
And
I
it was challenging. So,
imagine.
I'm pleased that, because it just meant that there was just even more pressure
Yeah.
on you. It's
Mm.
already difficult. And it was never easy. I never, and at times, like, it felt quite dark. Although, I was always striving, I was always working hard, and I wanted to do the best by Ollie. It it was tough. It wasn't
Yeah.
it
Did you
wasn't
ever
an
struggle?
easy.
Did you ever struggle? Because obviously mental health wasn't a thing back then,
No.
like it now. But do
No.
you think you ever struggled with any kind of anxieties, or just struggling to cope with the pressures that presented
Yeah.
themselves at that time?
Not consciously.
Yeah.
I am. I've never really suffered with depression, or I never felt that I'm or I'm really down, or so I can't put myself in the position where I'd say that.
No.
In terms of anxiety, I think I probably was very anxious, but
Yeah.
I think I'd built all of these strategies around me, um, like coping strategies, because there wasn't anyone to go for support. So you did build a lot of internal resilience, because nobody was going to do it for you then. I do think that anxiety did play a part in a lot of, I felt that anxiety a lot. Probably because of the pressure that I had around, like, lots of competing issues, really.
Mm.
But I know that I built lots of coping mechanism,
Yeah.
um, but it just made me more organized. I have developed some quite, my son and my partner will definitely tell you that I'm OCD. I am quite particular about things, but I think they were my coping mechanisms. I think it just
Yeah.
meant that I was more organized, that I
It's probably a control thing without even realizing it. You were in control.
yes, yeah,
And you probably didn't see it that way, but if there was anything that you could have, at least you had control of yourself, right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's probably right. So I think that probably yes, but I do think that it in a lot of ways it built so much resilience within me, which has obviously served me well,
Mm.
um, in the last 15 years, when things have been challenging, and as I have developed my career,
Yeah.
um, I've needed that resilience.
Sure. So talk me through then. So PA within the
Yep,
IT team of
yep.
this kind of educational division of the
At the
council,
local,
of the local authority.
hmm
So when did you transcend into then? I assume was it probably like a help desk or a technical analyst type role was your first role? Was it
Yeah,
that
so at
route?
the same time as this was happening, as I say, tech was building in schools, and actually schools started to recruit IT technicians. This was a new thing, that actually they needed IT support in schools. And if you look back 20 years ago, when this happened, a lot of the people that took these roles were often parent helpers, people like that, who were in school doing a role and they didn't really know who to give these IT technician job to. And they started advertising them, and because I was at the council, obviously you get the schools, um, uh, job job lists,
Mm.
as it were. And I saw this IT technician job advertised, and I knew that I wanted to get into IT, and I just thought, I've just got to apply for it. I don't have any concrete exams or anything to say that I can do it, but I just know that I can do this. I've got an aptitude. I now know that I'm very logical in the way that I do things, and this could be
Yeah.
the start of this IT career that I really aspire to. Um, so I applied for it. Found out that somebody who was working with an admin as well at the council had also applied for it. So we was talking about it. Yep. Interviewed. Got through to interviewed for it. Thought that I'd done terribly. This is evident in my personality, that I really do give myself quite a hard time about stuff. Thought I'd done terribly and didn't get it. As I come back, I remember walking across the car park and bumping into the girl that had also been for it, and she was like, "Oh, how did it go?" And I was like, "Oh, terribly." And she went, "Oh, mine went really, really well. Like, they asked me this, they asked me that," and I was, "Oh my god, I definitely haven't got this job."
Yeah.
I got home and then got a phone call then they offered me the job. So I did get the job.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
And that was the first kind of.
IT technician in a primary school. It was a large primary school. In today's terms, it would be deemed as a small secondary, in effect.
How many
Nearly
formentary
six.
was it? How many classes
Well, it was
needed?
split. It was split year groups as well, and there was a unit for autism that was attached to the school, so it was
Right.
off-site. So they used to integrate the autistic pupils into the mainstream school as well. So at different times, it was about 600 pupils. So it was
Yeah.
all key. It was all key stages. When I arrived, you used to have an IT coordinator. So there's a key stage 1 IT coordinator and a key stage 2 IT coordinator. I remember walking in there and thinking, like one computer room, like not knowing anything. I didn't know where to start. So instantly my organisational skills just kicked in. There was the filing cabinet in the room. An ex-parent had been doing the job. They had a book where they used to write down all the issues in. So it was just like all the teachers would just write their technical issues in a book, and then the technician would come in and go through the list and tick off the list of the jobs. So my organisational skills just kicked in. I opened up the filing cabinet and I found some, what I thought, what are these? And they were actually temperature sensors that connected to the computer, that were for science. So you could integrate the IT with the science lessons.
All right, okay.
And I thought, oh, this is
What
interesting.
year was this?
2001.
Right, that's quite cutting edge, isn't it?
Well, I thought it was, but I'm not sure.
No,
I mean,
perhaps not now, but back then,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I suppose, yes, it did feel like it. But anyway, I spoke to the IT coordinator. I said, like, what is this? And she said, well, we've got this program. It's an RM program, and we've never been able to get them to work. So that was it. Red rag to a bull. I was like, that is one thing that I will do. I will solve a problem. I will not let anything beat me. So yeah. So I sat there with this thing. I was like, remember, this is still the days of dial-up internet. Believe it or not, this is still.
I know because so all around this time. So I'm pretty much similar age to your son. He's about. So I'm November. So he's 7 months older than me.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, like, when you said about tech was coming to school. I remember we had a computer room in our primary school that was basically we had 2 assembly halls. So we had one that was like a junior and what was it called? A junior and
primary,
infant and junior school, wasn't it? Yeah. So there was an infant hall and there was a junior hall for reception to year 2, I think it was, or year 3, and then year 4 to year 6, or year 7 actually back then. And in the middle of them was like the kitchen that served both halls. So but what had happened is it was around the time that like the hot school meals had stopped, and it was like where people then brought in either their own packed lunches or it
got reheated and brought in from another kitchen, didn't it?
So, but basically the kitchen had been then turned into I think they called it the ITC suite.
That's it. IT suite. Yeah, that's it.
The ICT suite. And I remember I still remember the smell of it now talking about it. When you remember smells when you think
it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. So I still remember the smell of the freshness of the room. Yeah. But I just remember it almost like a horseshoe, but like a squared horseshoe.
Exactly the same, because those rooms weren't meant to have computers in. So they was furnished however would work. Yeah, exactly.
So that's how it's set up. But I remember the stuff that we had. I don't know if you remember it, but do you remember the robots that you could? And we didn't realise, but you was coding them basically.
It's programming. You used to have a little buffer box, like an input box, and you'd have control in, control out, and then basically we used doing things like traffic light sequences. So I used to go into the lessons with the Key Stage 2 pupils, and they're basically doing programming, which is just programming a set of traffic lights. Stop, go, pause.
Go right, go left, or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I remember. So that's so all of what I'm getting. Take me back to where I've not even thought of years. But so all of this stuff that you're talking about that you supported and stuff, and that's why I said, well, that's quite revolutionary, because we didn't have any science that linked into the computer.
No.
So it was that kind of tech that we played on, and then you had like your paints and that's kind of what it is.
That's right.
So what I assume you were supporting things like that, but then also like the registration systems and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was not so much then. I mean, the MIS systems in the school were supported. There used to be, and they still exist actually, Education IT Service, which is in Kent.
Okay.
And the ladies in the office, they used to buy support from elsewhere. So I used to do a little bit of support for the MIS, but it was mainly around the curriculum. It was very, curriculum support, IT curriculum support focused. But I just picked it up, and I think I'd been there 6 months, and I remember having a conversation with the Key Stage 2 ICT coordinator, who was pregnant and going on maternity leave, and so was the Key Stage 1, and she was like, I don't think we're going to get an ICT coordinator in to do maternity cover. We think you can do it. So, really quickly, and then all of a sudden, I'm realizing that I'm at home working on an assessment module for IT lessons. So I was doing the planning. I was literally delivering the planning for their IT lessons.
Right.
And one of the teachers in Key Stage 2, her specialism was art. She hated IT, so she used to say to me, "Can you take my IT lesson for me?" So I was taking the lessons, and then it was, everything was kicking off. So computer club for girls. There was something, I read something online about a computer club for girls, and I was like, I want to run a
Yeah.
computer club for girls.
Yeah.
And it was, you signed up, and they delivered you with a big box of resources. And I had 16 girls after school come into my computer club for girls, and we would go through. They would give you the lesson plan and a little module, and they was doing things like, actually now I've bumped into a few of those girls, and I'm actually friends with them. Girls that went to the school
Yeah.
like 20 years ago, that are my sons, that went to secondary school with my son, and I'm still friends with them. And they talk about the computer club for girls that I used to run. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But again, that was then, 19 years ago now,
Mm.
probably about 18 years ago. And there was all of these new initiatives, and I don't know, I just felt compelled to, do what I could. I
Yeah,
was going,
because women in tech probably weren't really a thing back then in terms of
no.
a drive to promote women in tech, or even actually, in fact, that many women in tech anyway.
But
So
I didn't know that at that point
cool.
that I was in tech. I was I was working in a school in education with an affinity with IT, and that I could see I could build a career from it.
Mm. Yeah.
That's all. That's I can remember, that's how I felt. We was part of an education action zone, so it was an inner city school, and there was all of these initiatives at that time where there was lots of different funding streams, and we was part of an education action zone, so we had lots of money. And a couple of the initiatives from the education action zone were gifted and talented summer schools, and they actually asked me if I would do a gifted and talented Easter school.
Mm.
And it wasn't just pupils from our school, they would send pupils from all of the schools in this education action zone. So I created a business case to deliver a IT Easter school in game making. And
Okay.
I didn't know anything. I was like, oh, okay, let's just have a look on the internet. And I found this program called Game Maker. I practiced it for a couple of weeks. It's like a multi-level game. So basically it was a platform, and you just
Or just
and
build a storyline to it almost.
yeah, well, it was just a multi-level game. So you just basically had a program that you could make any game that you wanted, like a multi-level platform game, any game that you wanted. So I created this business case. I sent it to the Education Action Zone. They approved it, and by this time, Ollie's getting a bit older, so he's in year 9 or whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, I'm only working the school hours, but I can start taking on a little bit more, a few more hours. So an Easter school was perfect for me. They was going to pay me for it, and I had 32 children across 2 weeks, and I taught them how to create multi-level computer games with this program.
Awesome. Amazing. So let's kind of fast forward a bit. So you went from 2000-ish, 2001
Yeah.
was your first kind of role in IT, and that was um, tech analyst within the school, but also then involved in the curriculum and the
Yeah.
delivery of
Oh, you're frozen.
you froze
Yeah.
to that. So yeah, in terms of the curriculum and that input to it as well. So because I know that you worked then for some quite large commercial companies as well. You worked for, haven't you, and RM Education and stuff. So
Yes.
and they were more in service delivery management roles. 2010s, I want to say, if I remember.
A bit earlier, so
Okay.
2007. 2007, I left the school.
Okay. Same school for that 7-year period.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, I said, I'm going to stay here to learn as much as I can about IT. And I think that by then I actually had an RM network in the school. So I was already working with RM. I'd been on RM training courses, and I was already aspiring at that point when I was in school to work for RM. I was
Right. Okay.
like, I really want to work for RM. That's
Yeah.
the company that I want to work for. They was the biggest education IT provider in the UK at the time.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating what they was doing. And I was just passionate about them as a company as well. And I could see, so I just decided to stay there as long as I could to learn everything that I could. And literally it happened like as soon as Ollie had done his GCSEs, I was like, well, I did what I said I was going to do. I gave up work. I did it. I've been there. I've worked part-time, and now he's done his GCSEs, and now it's me. I'm going to do my career, the one that I paused, but actually it wasn't a pausing of my career, was it? Because it was a development. It allowed me, gave me the basis and foundation to develop that career and get into a position that when I did feel comfortable in him having done his GCSEs and finishing school, that I could go back to work full time. And it's exactly what I did. And having worked with RM and having had a support contract with RM where they was giving me support, I was like, okay. And then I was understanding a little bit more around the bigger picture of IT, around service delivery. And I'm a very, very much people person. And I've always had quite a strong view of service and, you know,
They,
how the
they couldn't keep you locked in the cupboard, could they?
No. No. And I already was thinking, you know, had quite a strong customer centric mentality even then, and about, you know, providing a good service to the customer. I mean, and I really, you know, was really, really punching, to be honest with you, around the jobs that I started to apply for. And I was reading Computer Weekly, and I saw this job in Computer Weekly for service delivery manager for a local authority, which was Tower Hamlets, and I thought I'll apply
Yeah.
for it. And I'll just see. And I applied. They contacted me. I had an interview. The day of the interview was an absolute disaster. It was a nightmare. I was
Go
going
on.
up.
You got to tell the story.
I was going up to London.
Didn't fall between a train again by any chance, did you?
Oh no, but it was to do with trains again.
Stay off trains. Get buses, mate. Fine.
And there was a power failure. So I got chucked off the train, and I was stuck at Dartford for quite a few hours. And I was looking at my watch, and I'm thinking I'm going to be late. I kept calling them and saying, look, this is the situation. You know, there's been a power failure. I don't know when I'm going to be able to get to you. And it went on. And by this time, you know, I'm definitely late. And I phoned them at the last point and said, look, I really understand if you don't want to see me because I am so late, but I'm outside. And they was like, no, we'll still see you. And I was 2 hours late for the interview. Now, I know that if somebody turned up 2 hours late for an interview with me, I'd be a bit more, now I wouldn't, but I remember at the time thinking, oh God, would I offer the same, you know, be as considerate. Yeah. And I had the interview. Again, didn't really think that I stood much chance, but I thought, well, you know, this is all really good experience. Got the job. It was a new service delivering IT services to the schools in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, mainly primary schools. There was a few secondary schools, but it was 88 schools. Had a technician service, so the schools bought into like a 1 day a week or a weekly technician service. And again, I was working with RM because we was implementing RM networks in.
Right, so sort of based on their infrastructure, basically, yeah.
Yeah, in the schools. And then I struck gold because I was at the local authority. I was in delivering an IT service, and something came to fruition called Building Schools for the Future, which was a government initiative building new schools, which had two elements that were built in, which was facilities management in schools, which was unheard of at the time, and IT services. So the contract of building the school, you had to have the facilities management and you had to have the IT management as the IT service as well. And it was a different department at the Tower Hamlets local authority, but they didn't have anybody that could advise on IT or had any idea of delivering IT in schools. So I was seconded over into the buildings department to work on IT, but in building schools for the future. And it was just incredible. I just learned so much, and I really, you know, really cut off of my career
Yeah.
there. And yeah, that's where it really really started to happen. and I stayed there for a couple of years. I think that I went to work at that point. We're delivering the IT service into the building schools for this future schools. And I think I was a bit of a pain in the butt for them, because I was quite challenging on the contractual elements of the service where there was non-delivery.
What, in terms of you're giving, because you're basically the bridge between the client.
I'm the client manager. Yeah, I'm managing the client, which is the schools.
And you're getting no doubt you're getting crap from the schools basically because you aren't delivering, or was it a case that you weren't, but you weren't going to allow yourself to get into that position?
Yeah, so I think that I mean, the first thing I did was I read all of the contracts to make sure I understood what the contracts and what the delivery was. So I've always been, again, another brilliant skill that anybody should have, critical questioning. I've always managed to use critical questioning. So I really understood the contract. I could see that the schools weren't getting the best deal. So basically, I was I was on their side, and they could see that I was fighting for them to get the best possible service, the best delivery, the best implementation in their schools. So I built such a strong affinity and trust. And again, that has really served me well. That I built this, this
you showed integrity, right? The contract said it was X, Y, and Z should be delivered, and you were making sure that X, Y, and Z was being delivered.
Exactly. So I was holding the provider to account. I do think I was a pain in their butt, and I did actually go to work and it was probably one of, this was a point where I sort of, I hit a wall. You can't have, I don't know, but it's not always been easy. It hasn't always been plain sailing. So, we talk about the progression and it feels like, I've moved on quite quickly, but actually it wasn't a great experience. It didn't go well. It wasn't what I expected it to be. And it was a bit of a low point. Again, I hit a bit of a low point after 10, 11 months of working there and realizing it wasn't working out. It was a program management job. It wasn't service delivery.
Right.
I developed some project management skills as well. So I think that maybe it wasn't quite, they're definitely transferable skills, but I wasn't as passionate about that as I was in terms of the service delivery. I do think that it was a strategic move by them to get me out of the way. Not
right.
Never had that conversation, but but at the time I remember being, and this
so
is where
was you sacked from that job, for want of a better word?
No, I wasn't sacked.
Right.
No, it wasn't working out, and we come to an arrangement for both of us.
Right. Okay.
It wasn't.
It wasn't that they said, right, you've had enough.
Yeah.
It was a case where you both said, look, we're not happy, you're not happy.
Yeah.
Let's part ways. Thank you for
exactly. And it was really, really tough. And I just thought, how did I get here? But I just, at points I felt, oh God, how am I going to bounce back from this? But then you just think, well, I've just got to get on, because I just want to keep on moving. I was out of work for a couple of months. I was applying for jobs, and I saw a job for a service delivery manager at RM. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And I applied for the job at RM, and I was successful. So I went from, just being out of work for a couple of months to actually landing that dream job that I'd been thinking about for so long at RM. And it was BSF, so it's Building Schools for the Future. So obviously, that work at Tower Hamlets on BSF, it served me well, because I knew it inside out.
Yeah,
I knew the contracts inside out. It was a new BSF contract in Essex. It was supposed to have been 42 schools, but by the time I'd been appointed at RM, the government had changed, so it had gone from Labour to Conservative, and they just completely canned the whole programme immediately. That the Conservatives got into power. This is when the academy strategy started to come to fruition. So it ended up just being 4 sample schools and then 4 other schools that were going to come into the programme in Essex. So actually, I knew not long after I started that it wasn't going to be the full job, and that RM would need to find me something else to do.
Yep.
But we implemented the new programme, and it was challenging. I mean, those schools were really, really tough. None of them wanted it, and this was the resistance that I was facing. None of the schools wanted these programs. It was being forced on them by local authorities, etc. They wasn't happy about it. So, the suppliers were just hit with the resistance, and it was really tough. It was quite a young team. We was bringing all of the operation and the service delivery, implementing it from scratch. Like, RM were just finding their way in the BSF market as well, and they was learning quick. But it was a fantastic place to work. They're based in Oxford, so I was travelling down to Oxford fairly regularly.
Yeah.
It just all felt absolutely brilliant to me. I was just happy. Like, I'm in the career, I'm working for the company that I wanted to work for. I'm loving being in this space. I'm progressing through my career. It was just a brilliant time.
Good. So let's fast forward then. So you then obviously eventually got back into working on kind of client side now, and let's fast forward to your role at ARC. So did you go in as head of IT, or did you progress into that role?
Yeah. So you're right. I have gone. So I think this is really important. Particularly in the role that I have, is that I started Tower Hamlets delivering services client side. Then obviously I went to work for delivering to the client, so in the commercial side, and I actually could see the challenges from both sides. So it puts you into a different mental space. It built my emotional intelligence quite considerably, because you can see, I can see why they would do it that way, and you can see how the client would want it this way. So very quickly, I worked out a position of, how you can do well for both sides. I remember being just to go back, just when I was in delivering to Newham, and the schools were really unhappy with RM as a managed service provider. They used to come to me and say things like, "Oh, we need this software packaging done, and RM want to charge us £600 because that's what it said in the contract." And this is where people were really unhappy, and I'd say, "Yeah, that doesn't feel very good, does it? That doesn't feel right." So you might need that software, but that school down the road might need it. So it was a reverse psychology situation. So I said to RM, "I've got a good idea. Like, we'll get it packaged, and then we'll sell it to all of the schools. They'll want more of that, and they'll think that they're getting a better deal, because just divided by all of the schools, it's only £100 that they're paying for it." And we was making 3 times as much on the software packaging, on the upsell, because it was reverse. But the school, it was just built around resistance. So this was where my relationship skills really come into play. So yeah, carried on with the service. And when I started at ARC, I actually started as IT services manager. So it's a bit of a story. ARC had, I was actually working at RM when ARC went out for a full IT managed service, and I think I was told
for it.
Tender for it, yeah, right. For that. So ARC wanted a full managed service for all of their schools, because they'd grown considerably. They had an internal IT team. They had a IT director who said that this needs to be managed service now to get economies of scale, because there were so many schools. So they'd gone out to tender. I think RM was down to the last 2, with who were the incumbent IT services provider. And so I knew about ARC. So I was appointed as IT services manager. There had been no IT team there for about 18 months. So they had procured the service through, and there were challenges in the relationship. It wasn't going very well. But ARC had tupied anyone that was in an IT role in all of the schools and centre over to as part of the managed services contracts. There was nobody. They had a new CFO starting at ARC, and I remember him saying to me that he went to a principals meeting and he was practically lynched about the IT service. It was not in a good place. And he quickly realised that they needed to do something. It was a 5-year contract with a 3 plus 2.
Yeah.
And we was already started. They was already into the second year, and they knew that by year 3 they needed to decide what they was going to do, whether to continue or rip it up and start again.
Yeah.
So he said he realised that he needed to establish an internal IT team. So he created a small structure for an IT team to come into ARC again to have a look at the incumbents as a services provider and just try and work through the school issues and get it to work ultimately, whether it was them or it was something else, but it just needed to work because it had been one thing wasn't working, then they tried something else and that didn't work. They needed to find some stability of something that did work. They needed somebody with experience. So
that's saying like delegation by advocation. It's almost, right, that's not working. Let's just delegate it out to another company. All right, that's not working. We'll do that again. I think so many, yes, not just IT, but so many companies do that, don't they?
But people were weary, So I joined as IT services manager, and it was natural to me because it was schools, it was IT services. I knew I'd not that long before been for an interview for a ops director role, which I wasn't successful in. But the person who did get that job, Gillian McPherson, was the managed services director at RM, so she was my boss's boss. So I knew Gillian quite well. The service delivery manager was a guy called Stephen Lum. He was an ex-colleague from RM as well, so I knew him quite well. So I knew the people. I just hit the ground running. It wasn't working. Some of the schools were not in a great place. I've said this at ARC, and I've not been, I've not been shy in coming forward in this. I think there was mistakes made on both sides. I don't think nobody was to blame. It was just, mistakes were made on both sides. But it was apparent that it wasn't going to work. There was already too much bad blood. The schools did not have any trust in as a supplier. The team had been, I call them service weary. So the technicians in the schools, you imagine this scenario of them being at a school that wasn't an ARC school. So then they'd join the MAT to become an ARC school. So they'd TUPE from their existing school into ARC. And then they would have been in an ARC role working for the school, and then the managed service was put in place, and then they was TUPE'd to some of them had been in those roles, and it wasn't they was all sad, quite honestly. There was nobody, there was no clear idea of what the strategies were. There was the people were not being invested in.
Being put from pillar to post, unsettling, new employers constantly, new cultures to deal with, new managers to deal with. And none of it their choice. They haven't left. Moved.
So they was really service weary, and there were lots and lots of problems. So there was a small team of us, the CIO, myself, head of infrastructure, Gareth, and a program manager. That was all of us at the centre. And we was basically had this huge task of deciding what to do. And just with my experience, I'd seen that, schools don't want managed services. I'd worked for managed services. They don't want it. I believed in an IT service, a professional IT service. I'm a strong believer that, that whether it's, you're working for schools or whatever, anything that you deliver should be professional. So whilst I could see that an external service provider I could see immediately that wasn't going to work for ARC and for their schools. It just wasn't. But at the same time, not wanting to bring it fully in-house because the team, they didn't have the technical expertise. It was so much risk around bringing it back in-house because you're just flip-flopping. You're just going from that being one thing to the other. So I could see that wasn't going to work either. And thinking, well, actually, it needs to be a blend of the two. It needs to be what I defined as the hybrid service. So at this time, I was IT services manager. Cut a long story short, we decided that we would exit the contract at the 3 years and that we would create something differently. We knew that it needed to be proactive. A good service is a proactive service. And what did that mean around the people? What did the structure look like? I mean, there were so many things to do. We gave notice to in the January, and the new service, and I'll fill in all the gaps in a minute, the new service went live to the schools in September of the same year. That's exiting a contract, going out on an ODU tender to recruit expert service partners that would sit behind ARC in delivering the service to the schools.
Well, just from a tech standpoint, what basically the service, because you need a service desk software, or whatever.
Yeah, service desk. We need technical expertise because we knew we didn't have it. We had no strategy. I mean, the schools weren't sustainable in their IT. There'd been no investment in IT for 10 years. Everything was I'd never seen anything like it. I remember thinking, my God, it takes me back to working in Byron in the primary school like 15 years ago. There'd been so little investment, and I think that were brought in to try and build that strategy and to build a refresh program, but they just weren't close enough, and the trust would never be there between an external service provider and the schools. So we exited the contract. We went out to ODU tender for some expert service partners for networks, for infrastructure support, service desk. We tupied all the people that work in back into ARC in the July. We tupied them back early because I knew that we'd need at least six weeks. My experience told me that when they had a BSF contract, the contract went live on the 1st of September. They tupied the people that would be working on that service on the same day because of the legalities of contracts. It all happened on the same day. You get people turning up to working for a new provider, delivering a new service to a school.
Yeah.
It was an absolute disaster.
Yeah,
absolute disaster. They didn't know how to work any of the systems. They hadn't had there was supposed to be some training built in, but they was obviously working for somebody else at the time. So it was a challenge.
Yeah.
So I made sure that they had 6 weeks of coexist. So they were still basically being paid by. We was paying a contract, which is, but it was so important that we had those people on our side for at least 6 weeks before we went live with the service. And basically, I just spent 6 weeks with those people. We had training programs, we had getting ready for work, we had service desk training. They knew all the systems and processes that would be in place for day one. I was absolutely adamant that on that first day of service, having learned from all the experience of hearing them say, they didn't know what they was doing when they turned up, all of those things that they didn't have before. I made sure that there was a process and a strategy and a training program for it all, so that when they turned up for work on the 1st of September, when that new service started in those schools, they all knew exactly what they was doing. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
We had a cloud-based IT service desk. All the schools, we'd met with every single school and told them exactly how the service was going to work. As I say, it was like 9 months of absolute grind. And here we are. That was we're just coming up to the end of the 3 years. That's just under 3 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And since then, because I know that you've taught me through, when we met for the first time, you showed me all what, how your service desk works, and it is so impressive. And that's on XMA technology, isn't it?
Yeah.
So no, that's and from there the service and the schools are happy.
Yeah, I was IT services manager. When we went live with the new service, by this time I'd, as a team, we defined and built, completely designed a new service, a completely new service model. It was a proactive. I recruited 19 apprentices for that first day as well, to go into our schools and undertake all of the proactive checks. So I was very much on I want this service to be a progressive service.
Yeah. Your apprentices, they come from your schools, don't they?
We have a couple that have come from our schools.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally we did want them. We knew that, again, we went out to tender for an apprentice provider, and this was at the time that the apprentice strategy was coming into play, and the apprenticeship levy was available. And again, ARC, we asked for, can we use the apprenticeship levy to recruit these apprentices? So the apprenticeship levy pays for the training. And then the IT budget pays for their actual salary, their salary. So we recruited 19 apprentices. I got promoted to the head of schools IT service at the beginning of the new IT service. I think that was testament to the work that we'd done. And it was, pretty much from in the first term, the performance data that we used to have from and it wasn't accurate because the people in schools were not logging tickets. You'll know this from my presentation at your previous event, but nobody was logging tickets. There was no accurate data anyway. But the performance against the SLAs was shocking. You're looking at 60% performance against target, and people really didn't understand the SLA. So that was something else that I did, was I trained all of the staff in what the SLAs meant. I had a few really, really good managers, like field support managers, that I could really trust, that I bought, that came on the journey with me. And literally, like, we had high aspirations. I've got really high aspirations. Like, my standards are high, and I do move quickly. I am a bit of a force to be reckoned with sometimes, but it's all about
all for the greater good, right? And it's all
it's my passion, and I believe that the schools were buying this service and paying for it, so they deserve to get the best. And by the first Christmas, by early the next year, we're hitting 95% of target. Customer satisfaction has gone through the roof. The only people that our schools deal with are ARC people, because although we tupied them back, we tupied them back as a central team, and we sold it as a service. So I did want it to be a professional service. But
it's almost like a little mini business within.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a trade. It's what I call a traded service. So you'll see it everywhere. It is a professional service. It just exists within our own organisation, and it allows us for them to hold us to account if we're not delivering. I mean, there were so many benefits, and I can talk about it for days, as you know, because I'm extremely proud of it.
You can talk. I never have got
that. But basically, I mean, I think 9 months in, I didn't want to spook anybody. I could see that some of the people that were in the schools weren't the people that should be delivering a professional IT service, but I wanted to take them on the journey with me, because I don't think anybody does go to work to do a bad job. But you give them the opportunity to start off with, and
I think people doing bad jobs are people that are uninspired.
Yes.
And so it's your job as the leader to inspire them to do the good job. If they buy into the cause and the why, no matter how, say, unmotivated the person might be, they're bought in and understand the collective vision, then
Exactly. And we did start with everybody that was in the civic or IT service, and we had some really difficult situations, in challenges from schools, IT service in certain places not being good enough. And I was challenged at this point, because I wanted consistency. I didn't want disparity. I didn't want this, this was one IT service, and I didn't want it to be dependent upon the field support manager that was delivering to a certain set of schools, because we clustered it, because there were so many schools. And I was really early on concerned that I was going to see a disparity dependent on how good that field support manager was at doing their job. And I felt that there was too much, like there were 7 of these people all reporting directly into me.
They were like 5 schools each or something like that.
Yeah, about that. Some more, some less, because it depends on some of the geographical locations. It was a whole area, so it would be only a few schools. And I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to do the transformation piece that I needed to do, with having to 7 people develop 7 people really, really quickly. It would have taken too long. So I did take a difficult decision to do a restructure within the first year. Again, for the good of everybody, really, for the good of the schools, for the good of the majority of the staff. And we did change the actual structure quite quickly. I could have done that day one, but I think I would have lost some good people that I didn't want to lose. I wanted to bring a few people along, so it did allow me to build some additional relationships with some good people and really get a feel for the ones that I could see were aspirational, that were really competent, that could really come on, be part of my team and come on this journey with me. And I changed the structure, and around this time the CIO was leaving ARC, so and obviously I was developing and doing this restructure, etc. And I created 2 service delivery manager roles with team leaders across the clusters, so that there was real depth, quality in the service delivery, that they could hold fewer team leaders to accounts. They'd have 3 or 4 team leaders reporting into them rather than all reporting up into me. And that meant that I had 2 people who were on the same page as me, who was had the same standards and the aptitude and ability. So both of them were recruited from internal from the previous field service manager roles and was promoted. And we promoted for the team leader roles. All of those come from within as well. So they was all promoted from people that were already in the service in either a senior tech or an on-site tech role. So they was all promoted. So at the start of this, at that time, none of those people were necessarily the finished article. But they're all absolutely thriving now, and we have a fully progressive model now. When I created the restructure, I wanted the structure to be, I thought often a lot about myself in jobs and how, it happened to me at RM to a degree, like what I call in dead man's shoes, like where you want to progress, but the person that's above you is somebody that's been there for a long time, has got no intention of leaving, doing a good job. So there's no natural progression for you. And I call it dead man's shoes. There's no room for you to move. So the only thing you can do, it's not that, wasn't necessarily talent strategies of keeping people in organisations then. The only thing you could do is leave. And I didn't want to do that. I knew that we'd get so much value from investing in those people. And if they're happy, how happy is the service that they're going to deliver to the schools? And then the schools are happy. All of those things just felt natural to me. So we created this structure where we had the apprentices. Then the apprentices could get promoted into an on-site role. An on-site role could get promoted into a senior tech into a team leader to service delivery manager, fully progressive. And actually, in those first 2 years, we promoted 10 of those apprentices into on-site roles.
Yeah.
And it's been really, really successful. And they feel invested in. And then at that time, the CIO was leaving, and then ARC created a head of IT position, and I was promoted into. So a bit of a long time to get there, Jack. Sorry, but that's how I come to be the head of IT at ARC.
So did you almost replace the CIO?
Ish.
Yeah.
So the CIO obviously managed the systems and data. So the CIO was responsible for IT systems and data. So when the CIO left, they split us out. So they had me as head of IT, and then Lauren Thorpe as head of systems and data. So it was split a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it was almost that. But me and Lauren then worked very closely together. Yeah. But we
two women leading the IT team,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
That's right. So and I don't mean to kind of categorize or whatever, but there's no surprise it's bloody good because you've got 2 women running it.
Yay! Exactly.
And I mean that in the sense that the organizational skills, especially when you've got a woman they're scarier than men,
I've often been told I'm scary. I never used to see it. I think it's the you always know where you stand with me. I mean, I'm always quite. I mean, I can be brutally honest sometimes, but it's not in a detriment. It's not in a detriment. No. It's a detrimental way
because there's
fact.
Yeah, and also as well is sometimes there's just not. The time's not there to sugarcoat and skate around stuff. I am very much the same where, I say how it is. At least people then know where they stand, right?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I am tactful and I am the things that you need to be. But
I've learned to be much more tactful. Maybe 15 years ago I probably wasn't in the same way that I am now.
Yeah.
Because people say things to you and you learn to adjust, don't you? And you develop. But I think some people intimidated. I don't know. I've been told I come across as very confident, but I don't feel that in myself. I'm passionate.
Do you suffer with imposter syndrome?
Yes, massively.
Really?
Yeah, really, really. And I think it's from where I've come from my roots, and it has formed a lot of the conversations around my development in the last 2 years. And part of me presenting at your event were all part of my development to help with this imposter syndrome.
Mm.
Um, and I've never felt like my parents never made me feel that I wasn't capable of doing anything. They've always said that they knew that I was my own harshest critic, so they never gave me a hard time over anything, because they knew that I would always give myself a harder
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I've never been intimidated and thought that I wasn't capable of doing something. I always felt that I was, but then I've always felt in this bubble, something that I didn't talk about. But when I was working at the Food from Britain, and when I actually got that job as the exhibitions assistant, somebody that was in that job before me had been to university, and I'd worked at the organisation for about 3 years before I was even considered for that job. And I remember thinking at that time, if I'd have gone to university, I could have walked into this job, but I've had to spend 3 years proving myself that I'm capable of doing it. And
Yeah.
I felt that I did a better job than the person that had been
Yeah.
to university. And I think that's really, it's really important.
Yeah. See, I don't know, perhaps it's just because I was so not academic, and I'm not
Yeah,
academic, and I don't know if it's a case where, I think you learn once you leave education.
yeah,
Um,
totally. You
um,
don't look, it's not a school, like, it's brilliant. And I really on page with the ethos at ARC, that every child, regardless of their background, deserves a great education. But it's the real choices in life that really means something to me, because and I had this discussion with Lucy, our CEO, not long after I joined ARC, because it was to go on to the university of their choice. And I said, but not everybody can or will want to go on to university, but it's about that you are able to create your own destiny and have the career of your choice. When I probably did leave school and I went to be a PA, I probably didn't think then that I would have this career. But within a few years of leaving school, I knew that I could do well, and that I wanted to do well.
yeah.
Um,
Are you proud of yourself?
Very much so
Yeah.
now. Yeah, very much so.
Good.
It's Yeah, I think I am, and and it's I could be a bit, but it hasn't. Like you said, we've talked about the journey of being a single mum, and in those days it wasn't easy. And I remember when I was promoted to the head of IT at ARC, I did have that moment where I felt this is what I've worked. I felt that sense of achievement, and I thought, oh, is it going to change my view, because I've actually reached the point of where I wanted to get? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I still going to have aspirations to do
Well,
more?
what are your aspirations then? What because I
Um,
know for a fact that now you've got there's something new.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I am still very ambitious. I think that I did worry about, how would I feel, would all my passion suddenly deflate? That everything has been working for this, I'm going to be the head of IT, and now I've got there. Is it all going to suddenly dissipate, and I'm going to think, oh no, this, like, I don't want to do it anymore.
I'm
I want to
done.
go and, yeah, I think
I've
I'll just go
completed
and,
that.
yeah, exactly. And it didn't. It just made me, I just had further aspirations to do more. And actually, what I feel, obviously, I mean, there's lots of opportunities. I've met some brilliant people through one of your events, and I'm going to be helping out another multi-academy trust. So it's not, I might, you know, kid to providing advice, expertise, and leadership at ARC, that I can help others. And I think that's now that we've proven something works here with ARC. The
Mm.
IT service has been a huge success. We've delivered lots of projects. We've got sustainable schools in terms of IT, 10-year refresh plans, etc. That's in a really good place. So if I can do it here, why can't ARC is here for the system? What have we got that we can offer to other small mats, to other small independent schools? I'd really like to take that IT service, that model that really works, and
And
help
commercialize it
out.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah, but not for profit. definitely
Of
not for
course.
profit.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, of course.
But
But as a
provide that
commercial
service.
arm for
Yeah.
others through
I
art.
think I think there's something very different between a commercial organisation providing a managed service for a small school compared to having the trust of somebody that's one of your peers, another multi-academy trust, doing it for you, knowing that it isn't for profit, that it is, it is just about providing this good service
Yeah,
for others.
can tell you're passionate about it. Amazing. Well, it's been a pleasure to get to know your story. I had other questions, but I think we've covered so much in your story
I know.
that, you demonstrated, good leadership and tough calls and doing the right thing for the sake of the right thing and restructuring and all that kind of stuff. And you've, I was gonna ask what you've achieved, some of your proud moments, but it's clear, what you've done with art. You've turned that failing IT department or support.
Alongside the team, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it by myself. And I have to say that I've got, some really, I can come up with some ideas, and I think, oh, I'd really like to be able to do this, and and that is about having the right people around you as well, and that is really important. Leadership, and the head of IT, it can be a lonely place, and your team around you, to help bring some of that to fruition. And all of them have had, have absolutely astounded me. Like, the things that they bring to me, in terms of, oh, we could do this. And, we don't stand still. We have that continual service improvement mentality. And it's on the other side as well, the projects that we've delivered, embedding, making sure that everything's embedded. So I am proud of it. I think that ARC is my proudest moment. I've had quite a lot of career defining moments. I've had some knocks as well. As I said, it hasn't all been plain sailing.
Mm.
Um, so, but
Well, I think, and I said earlier on in this that you are an inspiration to women, and particularly women in technology. And I think that, to kind of summarize why I think that, for a few reasons, right? You had children young, and I think that a lot of ladies can be written off
yeah,
in that, and you went back to, I didn't realize you went back to work as early as you did, but
yeah,
you went back to work and you made it work, and you done what's right for you, and there's no surprise. You're so passionate, you got so much enthusiasm for what you do, and you can see that in the way that you speak about it. So I think that your journey's just been incredible, and from PA to head of IT, delivering IT for how many schools? 30?
30, 38,
38
39,
schools.
39 in September.
Yeah.
28,500 pupils and 4,500 staff.
Yeah. So do you know what I mean? That's
Team of 70, almost coming up 65-ish in my team.
Yeah. And it's bloody impressive, and you've done that in 19 years, from PA to that in 19 years, and that's not a long time. That's a third of anyone's
Yeah.
career, really, their working life, right?
But one of the things I just like to say is that, young people today, that, they're going to be working, like you are going, there's no such thing as, there won't be retirement at 65. You are going to be working longer, and that you are going to have a multiple careers. It might not be, you might not believe it now or whatever. Young people might not believe it now, but I think that there are going to be, you are going to have a number of careers, going forward. So I think that it's good that you can see that you can, like, it hopefully will inspire somebody to say that actually this doesn't have to be the be all and end all for me, and that I can look at swapping careers. And I think people will be swapping careers out much more frequently, in years to come for young people, because I just don't think those jobs for life exist anymore.
Sure. And I think as well, IT is a service-based, IT roles are service-based roles. Yeah,
Yeah.
you are the enabler to certain things, or you are there to sort. Say,
Yeah.
network goes down.
Yeah.
That things can't run off that,
Break fix.
right?
Yeah.
And And I think that people get confused with, okay, there's technical roles within IT, right? But me as a non-IT person, I don't want to see the technical side of
No.
things. I want things to work. And if they don't work, I want them fixed so they do work, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a people service. And
Correct.
I think that one thing that you know, perhaps people that are bubbly and charismatic and have personality and stuff, perhaps don't consider themselves for an IT role because they're not techies or so on.
Yeah.
When I think you've proven, and I'm not saying you haven't got technical
No,
skills,
I know
but
I'm not the most technical person. I mean,
it doesn't matter. You've got the
no,
people skills to either inspire techies to do it or to deal with clients that have
yeah,
challenges.
but I have exactly the same conversations. I talk, I talk to principals in our schools now, and I say as soon as I ask to go and speak to the pupils that have taken ICT as a subject for their options and things like that, because how many girls actually, when they talk here to IT, are they thinking about the engineering and the software development and the deep technical computer programming aspect of IT? Or are they thinking that actually, somebody that could be considered as a customer services person who's going to work in retail, why wouldn't you consider to going to deliver in an IT service? Those apprentices that we started, they didn't have technical skills. Within 2 years, they're able to deliver, and be in a technical role in a school. But it's not deep technical because we have our expert service partners that can help us with that. Actually, I don't want the people in the IT service fixing things to be the most technical people. I want them to be more customer oriented. I
Mm,
want them to be able to go and I don't want them to sit in an IT office and be too scared to go and speak to somebody about their problem. I want them to go and speak to them about it face to face. And when they fixed it, I want them to go and say to them, I think I fixed this, but can you just check it? And I want them to have an interaction. I don't want it to be that technician. That was never the ethos of the service, of sitting in an IT office and hiding behind a computer and saying, oh, I'm going to fix this for somebody, and then I'm going to tell them that send them an email and tell them that I fixed it, and then they come back and tell me it's not fixed. But if I'd have gone and sat with them, we could have resolved it together much easier.
yeah.
It's always been about it being customer centric and it being a truly service based model. So the people that, it doesn't need to be technical, they need to be customer service people. And I want girls to feel that, if they're considering a job in retail, why wouldn't they consider a job in IT,
Yeah.
in service
Yeah.
delivery?
Well, if you're selling shoes, you don't know how to make shoes,
No,
right? Yeah.
exactly right, Jack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Brilliant analogy.
Yeah, indeed. Well, anyway, it's been a pleasure to get to know the person behind the job title. Thank you, Lisa.
Cheers, Jack.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to that episode of the P&E podcast. If you like what you heard, please make sure that you share this episode via your social media channels, as it really does help us to gain traction in promoting this podcast series. Also, please make sure that you also subscribe to the channel that you're listening via, as you'll then get notifications as soon as we release our next podcast episode. Thank you.